Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host, wearing my flannel shirt because it's time for Flannel Panel. We haven't done it in a while. Flannel Panel is when I get to talk with really smart people about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. And so maybe this is your first time listening to Catholic Answers. Maybe this is your first time listening to whatever radio station you're listening to right now because you're traveling, you're on the road. You're one of the, I think I saw on the news today, 500 billion people are traveling for Thanksgiving today. 500 billion. I think that's it. Maybe it was a trillion. I think a trillion people. Chris is giving me
I think that was the national debt. I think that was
that's how much it's going up on Thanksgiving.
A day, yeah.
Lots of people traveling. So if you're finding us, just if you want to know who we are, Catholic Answers, you can find us at Catholic.com. Flannel Panel, we try to do it monthly, which means we get to it about every 6 months or something. I don't know. We're just not good at scheduling this.
People ask me when I'm out around talking or visiting support. When's the next Flannel Panel?
I don't think Darren likes it because he doesn't schedule it. Chris Check is president of Catholic Answers, one of the members of Flannel Panel. Hello, Chris Check.
Cy, thanks for having me. Thanks for keeping me on the Flannel Panel.
I can't vote you off.
No,
I don't have that power.
Actually, I don't know.
Do you think I have that power?
Well, I don't know. I know, like the TV shows, they sort of change casts from time to time.
Yeah. Oh, well, do the View change? I don't know. I think of us as like the View, but if flannel shirts on.
That's really going to sell people who are driving and listening for the first time. Like, I know what I need more of. The View.
Are you Whoopi Goldberg?
Whoopi. Her name's not Whoopi.
What is it?
Whoopi.
Okay, excuse me.
Whoopi is so
it spelled
different.
WHOOPI?
Yes.
That's Whoopi.
Also joining us, Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers, author of a bunch of books, including The Eucharist is Really Jesus, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Joe Heschmeyer, welcome.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Do you know what is extraordinary about this flannel panel today? Do you know? Just look at us, Joe. What's extraordinary?
Yes, we're all wearing flannel.
We all remembered.
Sounds like an obvious prerequisite for something called the flannel panel, but is a feat. It's an accomplishment.
I didn't
feeling
remember.
Like
I
no
had to
matter how
drive
this
home.
goes from here on out, the first minute was all right.
Yeah, the first minute we nobody showed up on screen with no flannel on. I have to tell you guys, it's been so long since we've done a flannel panel, and I want to confess, we are going to get to the news of the world from a Catholic perspective momentarily. Part of the reason that we haven't done a flannel panel is I think you'll remember the last time we did it, we were on a cruise ship, the Catholic Answers cruise, and we recorded it there. And I couldn't play that. It was unusable.
I often find that to be the truth about these flannel panels.
No, they're almost all usable. That one was unusable. We couldn't use it. And
was it because of that stuff that Joe said?
It was not. No, I love confessing to you guys the stuff I do. I don't know why.
You hadn't pushed record?
I didn't push record. No, I pushed record.
That was like I was at the top of my game.
I pushed record on both of your microphones, but my microphone I never pushed record on.
It sounds like it still might be usable.
No, we tried. We tried everything, and it's just not.
Are you sure we couldn't have AI?
Do you know Darren even tried that? He tried because sometimes AI can do that. It can find the really faint background noise and pull it up. But we couldn't do it.
I think it would have been really funny to have you re-record your part, but obviously,
yes,
like not in the same. Like,
excellent point, different. Joe. What do you think about fill in the blank?
That was like, I think that may have been our best one.
Yeah, it was. Now it's just lost to history. Yeah. The greatest episode of Flannel Panel that we ever did.
Like the SpongeBob Lost episode.
Is there a SpongeBob Lost episode? I did not know that.
There was. I think
of all the people to share that information I did not know, you would not have been at the top of that list. I didn't know you knew who SpongeBob was.
I had 4 sons. At the peak of SpongeBob.
You have 4 sons and know very little about popular. If I said, what's the name of a popular social media platform?
And I would say SpongeBob.
No, that's not social media. Social media is a completely different thing.
Oh, I know. Instapin.
There we go. Yeah, he's up on SpongeBob, but he doesn't have any idea what TikTok is. If you showed him TikTok, he wouldn't know what that was. All right, I'm not going to give out the phone number because we got news to get to. We got to get the news of the world from a Catholic perspective. And the genius of SpongeBob is the shape of his pants, I think. That's what sells the whole thing.
Well, if they weren't square, you would have a really hard time You're calling him SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes.
I like the SpongeBob song, It's Christmas, Don't Be a Jerk.
That is a good song. I know SpongeBob has
It's Christmas, don't be a jerk.
All right.
That's the best advice.
Our first story is actually about social media, and it comes to us from Australia. One of our favorite places, Australia.
Where you've been?
Several times, and I absolutely love Australia. Food is better in Australia. I don't know why. That's true. Food is better in Australia. I do not know why, but it's better there. I think it's the preservatives that they don't put in or something. But I have a particular love for Australia today because they are doing the thing the whole world should have done at the beginning of this. At the very beginning of this. Today, they voted on it in the lower house, and now it'll go to the upper house. I think it's called the Senate in Australia. They are going to ban the use of social media by anyone under 16 years of age. If you're, I think 16 or under 16, I'm not sure which one it is. No social media for you. No social media.
How does this manifest itself? You can't have a social media account?
Yeah, you can't have a social media account. And they will fine the companies if they make social media available to these children.
It's interesting how it sort of reminds me of going after the tobacco companies for selling to minors or something like that. It's probably and frankly, it's much more harmful.
Which one's more harmful, do you think? Oh, yeah,
the social media
is way more harmful.
Yes,
yeah. I mean, I don't think this
I'm not recommending your teenage children pick up cigarettes. Let's just be clear.
No, but the social media is soul destroying. It's horrific. So anyway, how popular do you think this is in Australia? What percentage of people support the ban in Australia, according to a recent YouGov survey?
Of 16-year-olds and under?
Yeah. No, what percentage?
Are you asking teenagers or are you asking grown-ups?
No, of all Australians.
I'm going to say 75% think this is a good idea.
Chris?
I was going to say that high, but more than half.
It's 77%, so even higher than 75.
Did Joe look this up?
Wow.
No, he did not. I could tell by the look on his face. Joe's, as always, Joe is completely unprepared for this show, so I am sure he did not look that up.
Well, he and I have that in common. Yeah.
I do want to read you. Not everyone supports it, and of course, American media treats it as if it is, generally speaking, as if it is some kind of oppression of the young, that we're going to ban them from social media in Australia. Because I don't know what's the matter with American media, but so Reuters has.
They lose money.
Get anxiety and depression if they don't have social media.
Yeah, poor self-esteem.
Well, here's the thing: is I think they still will, because this is not a ban on pornography, which there should be a ban on pornography,
and it'd be very easy to do.
Like that's supposed to be the most shocking thing to say. Just ask people: do you think there should be a ban on pornography on the internet? Most people will say yes. Because we all know what's happening. Children are being infected with this at a very, very young age, and it's destroying them. It's shattering them. It is making them...
It's worse than COVID.
It's so much worse than COVID. It's terrifying them. It's and doing all the other damage that you would think pornography would do. So I wish Australia would do that, but I'm giving them credit on this one. 77% of them... 77% of the Australians don't want it. But I do want to read, of course, Reuters listed all the ways that all the people who oppose this, Reuters taking the side of the 23%. But I want to read you what they have a thing called the Human Rights Commission in Australia. And if I hear the words Human Rights Commission anywhere, I immediately think of the Soviet Union. I immediately think, oh, this is a Soviet thing. This is just an import from the Soviet Union. I don't know why I am so untrusting about, because I do think that evil things are often given lovely, beautiful names. So if you're on a Human Rights Commission anywhere in the world and I meet you, immediately I'm going to think you're a Soviet. That's my...
or a Maoist.
Yeah, you might be a Maoist. But this is what the Human Rights Commission, Australian Human Rights Commission, which Reuters says is an independent statutory authority. What does that mean? What does that even mean, Reuters? They're trying to fluff them up as if they're somehow important. They opposed the ban, saying it violated children's rights to self-expression and to participate in society. So before social media, children could not express themselves or participate in society, apparently, because it's now a human right that you get on Facebook at 9 years old.
There you go. It does seem. First of all, I want to understand more of the Human Rights Commission's conception of human rights, but that's probably too deep of a rabbit hole of like, where are these rights coming from? And, if they're God-given, did God give us a right to Facebook? What day of creation was that even? I don't even know.
Oh.
Where is
Yes.
the conception of rights coming
On
from?
the sixth day. It was actually on the sixth day.
Yes.
God said, let there be Facebook and let the kids look at it.
Yeah.
Leave them kids alone. I believe he
it
said,
might have been
hey,
MySpace
teacher.
Back then. I think Eden was
Leave
kind
them
of a
kids
MySpace
alone.
thing.
Yeah, it was MySpace at the beginning. No, I actually looked up the Australian Human Rights Commission because I was so taken with that completely Soviet idea. And this is where they don't mention God at all. They don't. There is, but I don't. That's Australia. I don't think that's shocking. I mean, I don't. I think, like much of the West, they gave up on God a long time ago. But human rights are based on the principles of dignity, equality, and mutual respect, which are shared across cultures, religions, and philosophies.
See, now to me, that sounds like comes out of revolutionary France.
Yeah, it's just revolutionary.
Yeah,
That's a good
yeah.
point. Yeah, right.
Liberty, equality, fraternity.
Right. And that's exactly what that is. And I think the Aztecs would be amazed to find out that dignity, equality, and mutual respect are shared across cultures, religions, and philosophies. But there you have it. The Australians apparently have never heard of the Aztecs.
I think this is great news for girls age 8 to 16 who are the biggest victims of this particular world of social media. What I am curious about is what is it in the Australian character that is bringing this to the fore, down under, as it were. This is striking to me. They don't strike me as a reactionary people, the Australians.
No, but I wonder. I do wonder a couple things about it. One,
It's all the work of our friend there with Perugia. Yeah.
Charbel.
Charbel.
the
It's
head
all
of
Charbel
Perugia,
Race.
Australia. Yeah,
Yeah. He's having quite an effect.
Good work, Charbel.
Yeah.
But I would say this. I wonder if some of this is that none of these companies, the Facebooks, the Googles, the TikToks, are Australian companies. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, they don't have the same financial ties.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's
but
probably
that doesn't
It's also
account.
the case that Australia is a lot less libertarian than America is.
It is something.
And so that kind of strand, I learned recently that only 2 countries in the world allow direct-to-consumer advertising of pharmaceutical drugs, and it's the U.S. and New Zealand. And New Zealand is kind of like Australia's wilder cousin, but the rest of the Anglosphere takes a much more restrictive view on who and what you're advertising and selling, which there's pros and cons to that. But I think if you come from that more regulatory mindset, then asking, well, is Facebook doing anything good here? And the answer is no. Well, I say Facebook, TikTok, more realistically. Then there should be a good move to ban it. In the U.S., Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, was a New York Times bestseller. And in it, he basically argues, don't give your kids smartphones. But the problem is that you have kind of a collective action or coordination problem. No parent wants to be, the weirdos who've got the one kid who doesn't know when the party is because all of their friends have smartphones and they don't. And you could actually solve that pretty well with the flip phone, but nevertheless, everyone's afraid of their kid missing out. But if there was some way of coordinating action, whether that's more regulation or some other means, he proposes parents signing a pledge, then you can get around some of those things because the consequences are really obviously disastrously bad for young people. And I think parents in every country know that.
All right, we got to take the break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about Australia. There is a thing here about a society that's willing to defend itself must be a society that's willing to defend its children, and that is not American society.
We kill our children.
We are a defenseless society now. We don't defend our children. We have abandoned them to all this horror. But good for Australia. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we come back on the other side on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the reasons we should go to Mass is because it is the food of the saints that we receive. And for the saints, they understood rightly that the time after Holy Communion, that those moments are the most precious moments of our lives.
The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, live from the EWTN Chapel, every morning, 8 Eastern, on EWTN Radio and Television.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Reading from the Reuters report, Sydney, Australia today. Australia moved closer on Wednesday to banning social media for children under 16 after the Parliament's lower house passed a bill, even as Alphabet and Facebook pressed the government to delay the legislation. Who cares what Alphabet and Facebook want?
Well,
You're a moron if you care what they want in this regard. They're not the friend of your child.
Well, to make it even more extreme, I mean, at least Alphabet, my understanding was they already had an internal policy not to let you create an account if you were under 13. Now, that policy was completely unenforced. And I do wonder how this law is going to work. I don't know enough about the ins and outs of it. Like, how do you make sure kids aren't just clicking that they're 18 or 16 or whatever age, and then moving forward? Seems like you need some kind of verification regime.
Well, that's the game in Australia now is, well, we don't have the verification to do this. I mean, these guys can solve technical problems, 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. But then you give them a technical problem that would limit their access to children, and it's unsolvable.
It's
This
a
is an
simple
unsolvable.
thing. You have to provide evidence of your driver's license.
Yeah, you could
which
have
you cannot have
all
unless you're
kinds
16.
of but then there's of course the people who say, well, I don't want to have to be verified on the internet and all that. Well, that's fine. My strong feeling about this is adults need to learn this. At some point, we have to be socially responsible, not just whiny that we get everything we want. And you can whine all you want about, I have a right to this pornography, but it's a disease that's ruining children. So you're going to have a little inconvenience getting your pornography. I'm sorry, but you're going to have a little. It's okay for society to say, it's not our top priority that you get to your fetish videos without any obstacles. All right, that's not priority number one.
Right.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was just going to say that this is laudatory. On the other hand, even if it passes, I guess people will look for ways to get around this. The primary responsibility here for protecting minors from all the evils of modern communication technology are mom and dad. And I know Joe made the point that it's difficult or it's a challenge for parents to interfere with the social lives of their children. But we are in a cultural, social, moral crisis like one which we have never seen in history with respect to the malformation of the young. And parents, what does Chesterton say? In order to correct the exaggeration, you have to exaggerate the correction. And parents are simply going to have to say, yes, it's uncomfortable for me to tell my kids they're not going to have a smartphone, but I'm going to do that.
But I feel like, okay, so Joe's got little kids. You and I have grown kids.
Yep.
I mean, your youngest is in college, and mine are older than that. I feel like people who have been through it at our age need to tell young parents in some way, sit them down and go, this is worse than you think it is.
But doesn't everybody know this now?
No,
So
I don't think they do, Chris.
I'm starting to think that people do, and even young people do. Now, maybe it's not a large percentage yet, but I just think of the number of kids who want to just have a dumb phone, or who like to listen to vinyl records, or simply want the pace of their life slowed or recognized, as Joe says, that they're anxious. I think the number of people between, 8 and 30 who are starting to recognize the ill effects of all of this media is growing.
Yes,
I actually
think
that I feel more comfortable about them. Like, I think we'll probably see more things like this Australian law in a generation. Like, we're in a weird place with the digital divide, because we've got people who are now adults who've never lived in a world without iPhones. And then we've got people who, the digital revolution came sometime in their childhood. And then you've got people who it came in their adulthood. And for any number of reasons, including like plasticity of the brain, people respond at different developmental stages to things in different ways. Like, I still remember a world before widespread internet. And I was born in 1985. Like, it was a big deal when we got.
How did he get on this show?
he was born in, yeah.
He's so young.
I know, he is back.
And meanwhile, I'm probably above the mean age in office, well, at least the median age in office. Some of you are probably skewing the mean up, but it's striking. I mean, I go on Facebook, and first of all, I go on Facebook because I'm old enough that is a thing that I still do. And you've got people sharing AI-generated images, having no idea they're AI-generated, or sharing these insane, warnings to Facebook that they're not allowed to do things as if these are going to be legally applicable warnings. And it's like, okay, the people doing this level of ignorant, basic thing online, the people who think this is how you interact in the digital space are completely unprepared for the 21st century. And meanwhile, their kids are addicted to devices, and mom and dad are clueless about it. Yeah. Now, this is less true with the younger mom and dad who's also addicted to the devices. But we're dealing with this place where I think people have a completely distorted, in many cases, kind of incoherent vision of what this is, because it's not a world they understand well at all. They're like dimly aware, there's this world of social media, or there's this world of video games, or there's this world of even online pornography. And unless it's something that they've been touched by personally, it's just like a problem out there somewhere. And meanwhile, there's a generation behind them who this is wrecking their lives in major ways. And the older generation has no idea about what the nature of the problem is enough to have any good input about what to do with it.
If you are the parent of a 12-year-old girl and you do not recognize how these things are destroying her life, you're unconscious. I just think you're unconscious. Girls especially.
Well, okay, I think is, I mean, what about the parent, for example, who is not highly educated in the technological realm?
But
they're a single parent, maybe they're working all the time. They're stressed themselves. They don't have the bandwidth to keep up with all this. And I'm not saying it's not their responsibility. It most certainly is their responsibility. But it's also society's responsibility.
Agreed. I mean, and as I said, this is laudatory legislation. I hope it's effective.
I hope it's effective too. I think it's got to be just the beginning. It's got to be, and I hope there's a landslide of it. I just don't understand the idea that we can't say no to corporations. I'm very. There's this. It's a kind
where's
of
the left on this? Aren't they the ones who are supposed to be opposed to evil corporations?
Yeah, and it's one laudable thing about the Australians is it's both left and right wing, apparently, at least from the reporting I've read. Who are 77% means pretty much everybody's in. Like
right.
that 23%.
It'd be very hard to say 3/4 of Australians are conservative. based on any
Right.
sense
So
of that
it
word.
does seem to run the spectrum of people who know this needs to get done. But it's
And
like,
I bet in that remaining quarter, you've got people who are on the libertarian-ish right, as well as people on a kind of libertarian-ish left. I mean, this doesn't seem like the kind of thing that's going to be a left-right issue. I think it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, I think-
and so hopefully, I mean, I'd be interested in seeing what the numbers would be in the U.S. if that was proposed as legislation.
That
But I
would-
just think there's no major industry or special interest group that cares about it enough to maybe do anything about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, the people opposed to this are people who are profiting off the destruction of children. My friend Dan Kerr puts it this way. He says, the effect of all these things is it's outsourcing the imagination of children.
oh, what a wonderful
It
way
is.
to say it.
It is.
What a
I'm totally going to steal that clause. It's phrase, outsourcing the imagination. And then the other people who would be opposed to this would be demons. I think demons would be opposed.
I don't know what percentage of the Australian population is demons, but I do think it's pretty low at this time. All right.
Well, possessed by demons, maybe.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true. Okay, we got to take a quick break. Right back. More news of the world from a Catholic perspective with the Flannel Panel, Joe Heschmeyer, Chris Check, and me, your host, Cy Kellett, on Catholic Answers Live. We hope that one of the things that we communicate here at Catholic Answers Live is that our Catholic faith allows us to be fully serious about all the problems we encounter in the church and in the world, but it also lets us have light hearts and maybe even mix in a bit of fun. And that is exactly what our good friend Joe Heschmeyer does in his popular podcast, Shameless Popery. You should check it out at shamelessjoe.com. Joe's got a deep grasp of the faith, morals, the teachings of the church, all that, but he's also got a witty conversational style. He entertains and he informs, but you will leave equipped to better answer the most common challenges, misconceptions, and questions about the Catholic faith. He's got insightful guests, he does on-air debates, and he takes a close look into all the things that you want to know about as a Catholic living today. You'll walk away knowledgeable and filled with joy. Look for Joe on his YouTube channel. Check him out at shamelessjoe.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, become a patron.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
From its earliest days, Catholic faith has been lived by a yearly cycle of feasts and seasons. The new book from Mike Aquilina and Adam Lucas, Feasts of Our Fathers, is a one-stop companion for praying and meditating through the holy days and seasons of the Church with help from the most ancient Christian people. Don't just read about the early saints, pray with them. Order your copy of Feasts of Our Fathers now at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I have a quick legal notice I need to read. No person at Catholic Answers represents that there are demons voting in Australian elections or that any Australian politicians are demons. And any indication to otherwise is purely fiction. All right. I got a second story for you. Now I am like The View. I'm reading legal notices now.
I have never seen a single episode of The
These
View.
are too many deep
I don't think I
cuts
have
for
either.
View viewers that I just don't know if you've read our audience very well.
You're saying that you don't think there's a big overlap between our audience and the View?
In the Venn diagram.
I'm not.
I don't know.
I'm not sure who watches The View, but
Well,
I feel like they don't also listen to this show. I don't know what they do, but
Well, really? Well, now.
well, maybe they just leave the TV on and it counts as a viewer in some sort of Nielsen rating. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, like just
Right.
dogs left at home who get skittish if the TV's off.
Oh well, if we count as a viewer with just the TV on, then I'm a Turner Classic Movies watcher all night because I forget to turn it off. Okay.
You shouldn't leave your dog at home. dogs are not meant to be alone.
Why are you saying that to me? I didn't say anything.
No, Joe said people leave their dogs at home with the TV on.
So what are you supposed to do with your
Get
dog?
a fish. Don't have a dog.
Oh,
Your pet
I
needs
see.
a pet? This is
No,
the
he's not saying
recursion
get a
problem.
fish
No,
for the
don't
dog.
be
He's
a-
saying instead of a dog.
Do not be a dog owner if you're not with your dog.
And it's opposite with cats. If it's a cat, don't come in the house. It belongs to the cat.
Yeah.
Get out.
Look,
All right.
Exactly.
If you have a cat as a pet, that's a different set of
I,
problems.
I don't think there is such a thing as having a cat as a pet. You just take on the responsibility of feeding a cat that still considers itself pretty independent.
All right. Moving on. Flannel panel. Joe Heschmeyer, Chris Check, and myself. We all wear flannel shirts and talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. And here's some news for the day. Following the recent U.S. election, I don't know if you two were aware, but we had a major election here in the United States recently. Hopefully,
Not sure if we want to touch that one, but go ahead.
the problem with elections is that they just start the next one right away. Could we please? I want to have a constitutional amendment that the Congress just gets elected for 40 years. They can all just stay. I don't care. Do what you want. I'll vote again 40 years from now.
Dianne
Just no more
Feinstein,
commercials.
right?
Yeah, it works
she was
worked for her.
determined to stay for however many it was.
All right, but one of the reactions to the recent election was young women taking interest in the Korean 4B movement. Do either of you know what this is, the 4B movement?
I do know what this is.
I have since learned of it in the last 2 weeks.
Korea is
by
a
the way,
society in trouble.
I am not taking the 4B.
You can't. It's not. You can't. Anyways, you can't even do all of the B's.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. Korean women got fed up with getting paid less than men and being generally feeling unappreciated in their society. And so they I think this was back during the Me Too time here. They had this thing called the 4B thing, and I guess BI, whatever that prefix is in Korean, however you might pronounce that,
negative.
it means no. Yeah. So, and now any parents who have very small children in the car, I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but it's not going to be good. So I'll just tell you right now, I'm just looking at these two. This is not going to be good. So,
I mean, because one of the B's involves
no
the relationship of,
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Actually, we can say refraining from fornicating.
Okay. That's very well said.
I don't think that's how the 4B people phrase it, but I'm very happy that these women are going to stop fornicating.
Well, that's one of them. No dating, no marriage, no children. That's the one you can't do. You can't bear children anyways. And they say they're withholding these things as a form of protest.
Yeah, this is like the Lysistrata. Right?
Yeah, right, that's the famous-
Aristophanes.
Yeah.
Although that's a satire, by the way. It's a farce.
I have never read it.
No,
so
he's actually making fun. Aristophanes is making fun of the women in the Lysistrata.
Oh, he is?
Yeah, no, and nowadays people think, oh, this was a great feminist play. It's not at all. It's a farce.
Oh.
They are the object of mockery in the plot of that play.
Well, let's try not to mock women here.
No, I'm
but,
just saying, you feminists who think Aristophanes was a feminist are reading the play incorrectly.
Yes,
I'm
right.
thinking you're giving them maybe too much credit. I'm assuming they've actually read Aristophanes.
Oh,
but I mean, I may
this
be wrong
this
about
one
that.
does keep reemerging as a kind of a feminist.
They made a movie out of it recently. Within the last 10 years.
Lysistrata.
Listerine, I think it's called. And okay.
Yeah, so in the play, the women are trying to nobly get their men during the
stop fighting.
Peloponnesian Wars to stop fighting.
Yeah.
And they decide to withhold the benefits of marriage.
The problem with stopping fighting in the Peloponnesian Wars is the Spartans will just take everything you got if you stop.
Yes.
Like the other guy gets some say in that.
I
But
thought you were going to say the problem with stopping marital relations in ancient Greece is they barely consent to women in the first place.
Well,
women wasn't their primary
This
interest.
is part of the joke, I think.
All right, so Joe, let me just get your
I
take
think
on
that's overstated, by the way.
about the Greeks.
Yeah.
All right, I
mean, yeah, they did reproduce. They somehow managed to
They
produce
made
another
babies.
generation of
They
Greeks.
did that.
Well, so the funny bit here was that some of these women were shaving their heads to make themselves ugly.
Yeah.
This is, by the way, the modern one, not the ancient Greeks.
Right.
This is the modern Korean women.
But then, of course, there is a and I forget the name of it.
Alopecia?
Thank you. And so the victims of this illness were coming online saying, oh, So people who have this alopecia, we're
ugly
So,
now.
yeah, yeah. So
Some,
people,
some of them have husbands who will slap you on stage.
Come on, man. Do we always have to pick on Will Smith? Do we always have to go back to picking on Will Smith?
But
Why don't you just keep Will Smith's name out of your mouth?
But
all
the-
right?
I like that you censored it for the radio.
But the
Very well said.
news that if you're afraid you're not going to be able to get an abortion, which, by the way, I don't know why anyone is concerned about this.
About not being able to get an abortion?
Yeah. I mean, surely there are some states who have.
I wish it was not just a fear-mongering thing. I mean, I wish that there was a real reason people who love abortion were worried.
Yeah, but
unfortunately, I think that we don't have a realistic chance of that happening right now.
Yeah. But
Can
if
I
you're
give you-
refraining from fornicating to not have a baby, I'm with you.
That's actually the way you're supposed to do that. That's the correct way to
Can we
not
say
have a baby.
Catholic Answers endorses refraining from fornicating?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
You can.
if you're in a place where you cannot consent to marriage and children, then you probably shouldn't be sleeping around or getting married or having babies. That's 3 of the 4 Bs. The only one that leaves is dating, and dating's a discernment for the other 3. So,
And by the way,
we'll accept these terms.
I think dating here means sleeping around.
Is that what
Well,
that?
that's
I don't
the
know
first
if
of the
that's what it
4.
is. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I don't even know how people. I don't think people date the way they did when I was young. Certainly not as badly
That
as
was
I did.
carbon dating back then.
But all right, Joe, that's not funny, and nobody likes you.
1985.
All right, but this thing though, this is what underneath all of this. Isn't there the kind of perception of something real that women have abandoned their power by becoming men's peers sexually, rather than? Do you see what I'm saying, Joe? That
yes, I would like to jump in and give 2 recommendations, if I may. One is a very recent one. Mary Harrington, speaking into this directly, has an article called 4B is Magnificently Reactionary.
Yep.
Yeah.
In which she basically argues, this is a sane and appropriate response. And rather than making fun of these women,
yes,
we should be recognizing, this is
good point.
This is a healthy way adults interact.
She is having a good laugh at their expense in that piece, which I recommend. It's very funny.
The other one is a much older piece. It's from 2009. It's August 2009 First Things article by a law professor from Villa Preso by the name of Richard Stiff. And the article is called Her Choice, Her Problem. And it's fascinating because it delves into the sexual and marital dynamics in almost an economic framework. And so the argument was, in the days before abortion and the pill, the creation of a child out of wedlock was viewed as the responsibility of both of the consenting partners. And so it was a matter of course that you would at least offer marriage if you were dating a young woman and you impregnated her. And that after the pill and after abortion arrive on the scene, these are things that only the woman has the ability to choose. And so the bringing of a new child into the world was now viewed entirely as her choice and thus her problem.
Yeah.
Hence the title. And so one of the things we can document very easily is that the rates of shotgun weddings go all the way down. Now, that is a mixed blessing, right? This is not the ideal circumstances in which to create a marriage.
But it is most
Many
of human
those
history, though, Joe. I mean,
Right.
The fact is, most families are created throughout the history of the world because some obligation was incurred by someone along. Not just because somebody fell in love with somebody and the moon shone more brightly in their eyes. It's because something happened.
It wasn't always amore, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and in fact, those marriages have a terribly high divorce rate because it turns out, the moon cycle changes. So,
Right.
If you're waxing and waning with the lunar cycle, that's not the healthiest foundation upon which to build either. So, yeah, Stiff makes this point, and I actually built on this in some work I did in law school and looked at the effects of Roe v. Wade because you have, I believe it was 13 states plus the District of Columbia that were early adopter states for legalized abortion. They legalized abortion prior to Roe. And then the other, 37 states had it imposed on them by Roe v. Wade. And you can see changes in sexual practice. You can see changes in things like the STD rate and all of these things in the early adopter states. There's this explosion in sexually transmitted disease. And then after Roe, you see this explosion spread to the other states. And it's like, oh, it turns out humans aren't just animals. They are adjusting their behavior based on, their understanding
Social
of what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah.
Like if fornicating will mean that you're going to have a child and you can't just abort the child, you're more likely to be sexually responsible. This is an absolute win. And it's actually a bit disheartening that more, so-called pro-choicers don't realize, like, this is, we are not talking about lab rats here. We're not talking about monkeys who have no control over their impulses. There is human agency here, and people do adjust their behavior accordingly. Now, I think we can still have a conversation on the legality of abortion in all of those cases, but if they don't see that there is an obvious good to not having massive rates of contraception and hookup culture and STDs and out-of-wedlock pregnancy, like those are such obvious social ills that if we can't even agree on that, it's very hard to have a good foundation to say what the law ought to be or what like a healthy society would do to handle any of these problems.
Would you agree with this, that if people weren't so intensely interested in sex, in the act of sex, then the blinders would come off and you could just say the sexual revolution is a total disaster. The only reason people won't admit it's a total disaster is because there's an intense motivation to not admit it.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. But when you look at the results of the sexual revolution,
it's awful.
When you look at it, the effects on children, the number of children born in broken homes, and the demonstrable, available right there in the statistics kind of data. I mean, Mark Regnerus in the University of South Carolina,
He's great.
Was pretty famous for compiling a lot of this data.
I thought he was
Just
at UT.
in Texas
He's
now?
a UT.
Oh, maybe it was.
Yeah,
it's
he's
been
at
years since
UT Austin. Yeah.
Oh, okay, maybe so. But just looking at what are the rates of gang affiliation, what are the income patterns of the family, what are all of these? We know all of this stuff. This is not rocket science. The idea that having a stable and healthy family is the best thing for literally every member of that family is as plain as day, and yet we pretend not to know that so people can have the fleeting pleasure of hooking up, which, by the way, turns out not to be very pleasurable over the long term.
Yeah. All right. Well, I tell you, we got to take a break. I want to continue. We'll talk a little bit more about that before we move on to other stories. One of them coming from Texas, as a matter of fact. Let's wrap up the conversation about the 4B movement. When we come back, I want to share with you what my wife said about it. I thought she had an interesting take, one that made me feel better about myself as a human being. We'll share that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Hang on. We'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
The Catechism defines evangelization as the proclamation of Christ and His gospel by word and the testimony of life. But what does that look like in real life? It looks like St. Paul street evangelists out in the public square sharing the good news. We're a Catholic nonprofit that starts conversations by handing out free sacramentals. Then we employ our method of listen, befriend, proclaim, and invite. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to learn more.
EWTN Radio posts 11 podcasts every weekday and over 60 per week. They're the perfect companion for busy Catholics everywhere. With on-demand access to audio, you can pause and pick up right where you left off anytime, anywhere. And they're all free. Subscribe by going to EWTNradio.net, then click on podcasts. They're waiting for you. EWTN is the global Catholic network.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Just keeping score of how the show is going so far. So far, the big winner for the show is Australia. The big loser is the 4B movement. But the show is early.
I say take the win.
Take the win.
4B.
4B.
I think it's great that you're going to stop fornicating and reduce abortions. I think the abortion industry doesn't like the 4B movement.
No, but what a sick. Like you have to perpetuate
Follow
the
the money.
sickness in order to keep making the money.
Yeah.
I read this to my wife one morning. I said, "Have you heard about this 4B movement?" And then I read her a little bit, and she goes, "That's not a very pro-woman movement." And I said, "Why not?" And she goes, "Women like men."
Yes.
And I was like, well, I feel better about everything right now. I think that is a basic insight that one of the things that we can easily fall into when we discuss any of these kinds of gender, sex issues is the basic thing that the world is not fundamentally divided down the middle between men and women. It's united. We like each other. We want to be around one another.
But can I say there is a kind of a glimmer of observation of the truth in the 4B ladies, in noting that the problem is men. They don't really really understand what the problem is, that they've been used. Abortion benefits men.
That's one of the major points Stith makes in that piece I mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
I mean,
abortion completely benefits men. The sexual revolution, you can.
It's all about protecting men from consequences.
Sure,
is what it is.
100%. So women do sense, these 4B women. They do sense. Okay, we've been used. Now they're not understanding exactly. And now men are men are making other bad decisions, meaning I can't fornicate at will, but I think the church here, bishops, priests, Catholic Answers, I think we would do well, and I think abortions would decrease if we could make it very, very clear that men are culpable. I think most abortions would not take place if there wasn't a dad or a boyfriend driving the girl to the abortuary.
Well, I mean, you see that in the numbers as well. When women are asked about why they get abortions, the majority.
My dad.
Like if your daughter comes to you pregnant as a father,
you say,
there's a million things for you to do. None of them are encourage her in any way to kill your grandchild.
Yeah, daughter, I've got your back. This is going to be a little bit difficult.
These things happen.
Yep. And
this is part of life.
And we're here with you through it all.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Now let's go. Visit the prenatal doctor or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And there's nothing you can do to ever make me stop loving you and caring for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
But no, I'll drive you. I'll pay for it, and I'm going to go get something to eat, and I'll come back and get you.
And if you don't do that, there's just no other way to say this. You're a bad father. If you do, if you do any of this abortion stuff,
woe betide you when you stand before our Lord to
that's
be judged.
not that's the opposite of your job.
Yeah.
To encourage your daughter to engage in murder.
And by just think of this in terms of the pagan sense of morality, you're killing your offspring, whether it's your grandchild or that which you have sired.
Right.
That's really bad. That's a very bad thing to do.
Yeah. And if and it's like the boyfriend who's like, whatever you want to do, I'll support you. That's so knock it off, you moron. That's not how you talk to it. You say, this is my responsibility as much as it is yours. This is what I want to happen. You don't sit there. I'll support you, whatever. That's a way of saying, I'm hoping you'll get rid of the kid, but
you might think me old-fashioned for this, but I think the man has more responsibility
than the woman.
Yeah. Yep.
I do think you old-fashioned.
In terms of abortion?
In terms
I mean,
of,
I think it depends
in terms
on so much on the case by case.
Yeah, it would perhaps. I would say just generally, men are supposed to be leaders in society. They are supposed to be heads of households. They're not supposed to seduce women. And the culpability, this is my gut, and you're going to call me old-fashioned, is greater.
Huh.
Yeah.
I think we have a dual abandonment of, for one, traditional gender roles, and two, a sense of what it is to be a grown-up. And I think, I talk to enough young men who complain about not being able to find women who want a man who is what you just described.
Yes.
And I hear from a lot of young women about not being able to find a man who is as you described. Yeah. And so partly, I think we just have a culture that doesn't know what men or women are, or what they're about, or what their roles are. And they're unhappy with that, but they don't really have a solution to it. Yeah. Like, I don't think anyone is I've not met anyone who's like, I think things are going great with young men and women. I think the relationship between the sexes is really good and healthy right now. I'm glad there's radical feminists and men's rights activists who loathe one another. Like, I think that's really good. I don't hear that at all. What I hear is a lot of brokenness and a lot of like resentment to anyone who suggests men and women are made for each other and we can actually be happy with each other, but we need to be grown-ups about it. And we need to have certain reasonable expectations and responsibilities towards one another.
Totally agree with everything Joe is saying here, but I think that the bulk of the rhetoric we get, even on on the pro-life side, does focus on, in fact, I think you might have even said it today, side sort of the power of women, or which is you were describing these 4B people. But the pro-life side uses this too. It goes all the way back to like Maggie Gallagher and George Gilder and these folks. And women are the civilizing element of society. And I am not denying that they do bring a certain kind of civility to society, but it's in St. Paul, and men are supposed to take the leadership role. And because they have failed to, babies are dying. And this is not something that you hear even in pro-life sermons.
Let me ask you. Go ahead. I don't want.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think there's truth to that for sure. I guess I had a conversation with a priest not long ago where he made the observation that every Mother's Day homily seemed like it was women are so great, and every Father's Day homily was guys get it together, and that he thought there was something really unhealthy
there is
in having that constant kind of approach that we often, I think, in the pro-life movement kind of infantilize women and sort of want to pretend like they're just victims. And there is a real sense of victimhood. Women are more relational. And so it's easier to pressure them into abortions they don't want. But they are still saying yes to this. And they are adults. I mean, in most of these cases.
Not always, but yeah.
Right. And so I think it's fair to say there's a dual failure. I don't think we need to demonize women at all. But I think we can recognize them as consenting adults in the cases where they're consenting adults.
Would you agree with me, Joe, however, that men, and here even by the pro-life movement and by the church, have not been held sufficiently accountable for their culpability in abortions?
Yes, probably partly because they are often not there at the moment of the abortion. Which is actually itself like.
I think typically they are. They're driving. They're paying. They're writing the check or swiping their card or.
Well, I mean, sometimes we know this for a fact. The abortion industry does not want to talk about this, but the rapist is taking the rape victim to the abortion clinic. Yeah. This is the reality. This is the gross, ugly reality of what's happening. I do think that there is
in 2016, Luke Skywalker's son, his girlfriend, was pregnant. And he and his wife pressured her to get an abortion, and she didn't. And she sued the son, who's a 37-year-old man, by the way, who is still like not married and is like trying to pressure his girlfriend into getting an abortion. And it's like, you're Mark Hamill. Like, you've got Hollywood money. Why could you not afford a grandchild? Like, it's crazy to me that you would think that the solution to that is abortion. Yeah. But this became an international news article.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine if it was the shoe is on the other foot, where it's like the woman's family saying you should really get an abortion, that doesn't become an international news scandal in any of the same way. Right. So I do think people are disgusted with men in their roles in pushing for abortion, probably more than they're disgusted with women who decide that they want to have abortion.
Well, let me just throw something out for you just to be cheery as we close this hour, and then we'll get on another topic next hour. If we don't convince young men and women to marry and have children, our society is going to die, because you cannot, at a less than 1 replacement rate, survive more than 2 or 3 generations as a society. Like, you're done. It's not like, that's kind of there's fewer people than. No, you're done as a society. You're at the current replacement rate in South Korea, we're 2 generations away from there being no South Koreans. They'll be gone. So how I think a fundamental deep question is, how are we going to construct the world or reconstruct the world or mitigate whatever we've done so that young people will be, once again, enthusiastic about being moms and dads?
I think
if you want a silver lining here, the like birth rate of traditional Catholics is 3.6, according to the economist Philip Pilkington. And one of the reasons early Christians took over the Roman Empire was that the Romans were killing their children, and Christians were having children.
Yeah. All right. Well, that takes care of the first hour. We got some wonderful, fascinating stories in the next hour, including a discussion of Martin Scorsese's latest project, the big Jubilee year that's happening next year and nobody seems to know about. We'll talk about Bibles in Texas schools with Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, with Joe Heschmeyer, apologist, author, father, lawyer, former seminarian, and so many other things, including raconteur, and me, your host, Cy Kellett, right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Sometimes after a really good first hour, I'm just like, well, should we even do the second hour? I don't want to ruin it. We're like, that was such a good first hour. I don't want to ruin it in the second hour. But all right, we'll try to keep up. We'll try to keep our standards up for the second hour. By the way, it is holiday. A lot of people are driving. I checked CNN during the break, and it is 52 billion people currently on the highways of the United States. I believe that's an accurate number. I might have rounded up a little bit. 52 billion people. So if you're just hearing us for the first time, first of all, I hope we're good company. We try to be good company, and thanks for listening. And whatever radio station you're listening on, we're probably on here every day, every afternoon at this time. If you'd like to know about us, you can find out about us at Catholic.com. That's our website, Catholic.com. We are an apostolate. That's basically organization of the Catholic laity that completely devoted to explaining and defending the Catholic faith, except when we do flannel panel, in which case we just talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective with Joe Heschmeyer. Joe, welcome back for a second hour.
It's good to be back.
Do you have any fears about ruining what so far is a really good show? Or do you feel confident we can do it for another hour?
I think I have less esteem for the first hour.
Really?
So,
you do?
I mean, I didn't think it was bad, but I don't think it was,
I don't know,
like
Joe.
the the platonic form of radio.
Really? With reference to Will Smith with come on.
That's true.
Also with us, the president of Catholic Answers, Chris Jack. Thank you for coming back, Chris.
I think you skillfully helmed the first hour,
Really?
Cy, and I'm really looking forward to sailing with you in the second hour.
Well, thank you
Can
very
I say
much.
something to those people in traffic right now?
Yes.
The person who cut you off is having the same kind of stress you are. Yeah.
They're just not handling it as well.
Their life is every bit as difficult as yours. In fact, it's probably more difficult. So
I feel like you're talking to me because you know I have a problem with this. When people cut me off in traffic, I don't handle it well.
Oh, now, as a matter of fact, we do have a colleague who will remain nameless, who has a problem when people cut him off. Oh, I said him.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about our other colleague, Bernadette, who no, really,
who's constantly cutting people off in traffic.
No, I almost ran over her in my car one time, and I think she might still be mad at me.
Wait,
about
was
it.
she in her car, or she was walking in the parking lot?
She was
Because
walking
she's
in the
not real
parking lot.
tall.
I like the idea that this is a Bernadette problem.
I didn't. No, I was so
not-
scared that he was going to say Bernadette has. Keeps reporting you to the board for your bad driving. Because Bernadette, I'm sorry if you're listening. I really am sorry that I almost ran over you one day. Okay, go ahead. So you were going to. All right, Joe. Let's try to guess who the person is that Chris is referring to.
I think he
the
edits
bad driver.
books.
Oh my goodness!
That leaves there's two. There's
That's
two people
you
there.
cut it down to two.
Well,
and then Chris's reaction is like makes it clear it is one of those.
He is
two.
a motoring enthusiast.
He's a motoring enthusiast, and he doesn't handle cutting off
He has
in traffic.
fancy tires. He's into tires and knives too.
I'm scared of
It's a
this person
dangerous
now.
combination.
I don't know who it is.
No, he has a he's quite accomplished in the kitchen. So he has he has good knives from Japan or something.
This sounds so ominous.
Does he ever have an autumn
drives
festival
around with
named
knives
after him?
Until somebody cuts him off.
All right, let's. We're
can
not
I
going to
just
try to
go-
guess who the worst person at Catholic Answers is.
We're going to
We all know it's
say
Trent Horn.
this,
But
however,
go ahead.
because we were talking about the sexual revolution in the last hour.
Yeah.
You are a talented interviewer, and you are doing these long-form interviews from time to time
which
now.
I am having so much fun doing.
Which I think we used to call focus, but we went with a more
Long-form
provocative
interview.
title, like long-form interview. This is still something of a
We're
puzzle
media
to-
professionals, Chris. We
Yeah,
know how to
someone's
brand
going
these
to
things.
explain this to me.
I
right?
feel like the irony of calling it focus when it's a side conversation was too much for people.
No, that's actually a very good point. It should just be called lack of focus.
Well, you did a brilliant one less than a month ago with the brilliant Amy Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I thought of her, of course, because, well, first of all, I listened to it's 2 hours.
I know.
Now, I had to drive to El Centro.
So I got you all the way to the El Centro.
Yeah, you
didn't
did.
I?
And, well, a little bit on the way back. But it's brilliant. You're a brilliant interviewer, and this is a remarkably perceptive young woman. And if you want to understand the effects of the sexual revolution from the perspective of a woman who suffered as a consequence, and she's quite candid about it, dial this one in. Amy Hamilton, it's on the YouTube channel.
On the YouTube, just that's where you get it on YouTube.
She is
do those go on the app, Darren? The long form interviews? Not on the app yet.
She is a student of or a research assistant for Mark Regnerus.
Yeah.
First-rate mind.
I would like to say that I am a brilliant interviewer in that interview. And here's what makes you a brilliant interviewer. You talk to someone like Amy Hamilton.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you're like a genius. Everything you say is brilliant because you ask a question and you get this. She's really wonderful. I thought she was wonderful.
Yeah, you want to get beyond the platitudes, and she's absolutely great.
It looks like it's called The Root of Our Cultural Crisis and How to Fix It.
But
there's also one on YouTube called Don't Allow Social Sciences to Shape Christianity.
Oh, that's a clip from it. That's a clip from it.
Okay.
The second
I
one's a
guess
clip
that
from
one's
it.
only 3.5.
Oh, that's a media
The other one's-
technique. You take a clip
We do a
and
clip,
then
yeah.
Yes.
It's a media
see
technique
that
called,
now.
this is what Matt Fradd does. Let's try it.
Oh.
That's what, that's our technique.
Are we going to just have a bunch of Australian adulation in both hours?
I know. I'm very pro-Australia today, aren't I?
Yeah.
I am very pro-Australia.
Is Matt Fradd from Australia?
Yeah, he's like the wizard from Oz.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Matt Fradd, the Texas Board of Education.
Well, Cameron's from Texas. Cameron.
I totally knew that. Let's just go with that. Let's just go with I knew that. The Texas Board of Education approved an option for teaching the Bible in public schools. They are outraged about this at PBS or at NPR. I don't have the audio for you because it just wasn't good enough, the audio, but they are outraged at this violation of the core tenets of American constitutionalism and the idea enshrined in the Constitution of the separation of church and state.
Not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution.
Oh, the details, all right? Facts, don't let facts get in the way of a good conversation. So either of you have any feelings about the teaching of the Bible in Texas schools? Public schools,
My favorite part about this is just a small detail. The curriculum is called Bluebonnet Learning.
Oh, yeah. What's that about?
I really want it to be called White Bonnet Learning because of all of the really alarmed handmaidens outfits that.
Well, shouldn't that be Red Bonnet? Learn the handmaids.
I thought it was white bonnets on red.
Oh, I don't know. That might be right.
I haven't ever had the opportunity to wear one, but yeah, it's like look. Shakespeare is probably second only to the Bible, particularly the King James Version of the Bible, in terms of influence on the English language and, expressions, idioms, everything else. It's something as simple as the apple of my eye. No. If you don't know where any of that is coming from, it's not just a spiritual impoverishment, it's also a linguistic impoverishment.
You're literary.
And it's also, like, in a real way, a cultural impoverishment. Like if we were an Arab country and we, pretended the Quran didn't exist, we wouldn't understand our own culture. Well, we're not an Arab country. We're a Western country with an Anglo culture in terms of linguistics and history.
Of course, yeah.
And you don't understand your own history or the history of the country in which you live without knowing this. Whether you agree or disagree with its propositions, you should know it. I mean, likewise, you should know things like, the Lincoln-Douglas debates. It doesn't mean you have to agree with Lincoln or Douglas. You just have to know where you come from as a people, as a culture, and be able to, converse intelligently on it. That's, I think, a very basic role a school ought to be providing. I mean, I guess in a lot of ways, I'm going to get up my soapbox here for a minute, if you don't mind.
You were pretty far up on that
We don't know what
soapbox
we're
there.
doing with education. You have these very vague ideas, and these ideas are in tension with one another. Are we just trying to get students to pass tests? Are we doing job preparation? Are we trying to inculcate wisdom and civic virtue?
STEM.
These are not the same roles, right?
Yeah.
And so if we don't know what we're doing, we have very little way of measuring whether a particular curriculum gets us closer to that goal or not.
G.K. Chesterton.
And so,
go ahead, Joe.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say G.K. Chesterton calls education the soul of a society passing from one generation to the next. So the Bible, of course, is, as Joe says, quite influential on the formation of the soul of a society, American society and European society before that, which is that which from we come. So, right, simply as a cultural understanding of whence we came, this is critical, and from where. But I'm, and I don't disagree with a single thing you said, Joe. I'm a little tired, though, of limiting our arguments to the literary merits of the Bible. I think that it's good. All education, all education is Christian education. That's a fact because of the incarnation. The incarnation changes everything in education. So there's no education outside the context of Christianity. I'm guessing that what's happening in the public schools in Texas is hardly approaches, the depth of what it could be in terms of Christian education. But I think it's time for Christians to just be very explicit. Yes, we are teaching the Bible because you can't be educated if you don't know it.
I actually think a smarter move would be something like what Missouri has done. Missouri has created a very generous, basically charter program. It doesn't call it charters, or excuse me, voucher program. It's called Missouri Scholars, and it's privately funded, but all of the donations are completely tax deductible. And so, but not just tax deductible, like you can offset your taxes by that amount, whatever you call that.
It's a credit. It's a tax credit.
Yeah, tax credit. There it is. So there's a tax credit for private individuals and businesses to give into the fund.
Yep.
And the fund then goes for people to go to whatever school they want to. And then you avoid all of these curriculum fights, or at least most of them, because you can just have an openly religious school and the people who are going to it want to be there and their parents want them to be there. And there's no more fight.
And could I say there's probably someone there who's qualified to teach the Bible, because this is a problem. The Bible's not a magic book. It doesn't have some magical power outside of the context of the Christian life. It can't really be read. And I mean, how am I to know what it means if there's no one to teach me? That's essentially what the Ethiopian says to Philip the deacon. And
right, in Acts 8.
And so the idea that a public school is equipped for this, I think, is a dubious one.
Sure.
I do think it's a dubious one. And as a matter of fact, I think maybe in Texas, but in California, would you want? I mean, if they said, if something strange happened and they said, let's start teaching the Bible in public schools in California, would that be a good thing or would it be a bad thing? Like, what would they be saying about the Bible? How would they be making sense of the Bible? It requires the Christian context in order to have its meaning. That context might exist in Texas. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with Texas. It does not exist in California. So I don't think we should treat this as any kind of panacea. The other thing is, in states that have similar laws to Texas, the schools end up not teaching the Bible anyway, because there's nobody there who's ready to teach it. So they just don't. 100 years ago, Ernest Hemingway could write a book called The Sun Also Rises, and everybody knew what he was referring to in that title. And they knew that was about the meaninglessness of human life. He was referring to Ecclesiastes, where Ecclesiastes is basically lamenting the horrible meaningless. This is a reference to the life after the First World War. Today, you could write a book and put the title "The Sun Also Rises" on it. Nobody knows what that. What is this? A science book?
You're just arguing for geocentrism.
Yeah, yeah, right. So I mean, the fact is, you are not prepared to read English literature if you have not had exposure to the Bible. You're not prepared to read English literature. You can't do it. Even an atheist or apparent atheist like Ernest Hemingway is constantly referring to the Bible. But where is the public school teacher who is equipped to communicate the Bible? I'd rather have the person just wear their cross or their crucifix and treat the children with charity so that they associate charity with the cross than have them try to figure out the Bible and communicate it to fourth graders.
Yeah, I mean, it raises a lot of those good questions. I think you are going to have non-religious people or non-Christians reading the Bible with students, and it does seem like it's hard to see a through line where that's going to result in, and then all these kids decided to get baptized, or then they had a greater appreciation for the kerygma or anything like that. And so it's difficult to see how that's going to be a solution. A lot of these things feel like bold stances for the sake of being bold stances, that you kind of know it's salt in the other person's eye, and that's kind of why you're doing it. Like the Ten Commandments.
Yes, Joe, that's a very good point. Christianity's salt in the eye of the secularist is not what Jesus wanted.
Well, to use a trivial example, it's like the woman from Carolina who's making a thing about the bathrooms in the Congress. And frankly, in the offing, she's giving publicity to this fellow in Delaware who's confused.
Who thinks he's a lady?
Yeah.
All right, wait, I'm sorry. I got to take the break. We'll be right. That's quite a place to end. I don't know how this happens. It's because Joe Heschmeyer is on the panel. Somehow we start talking about Texas and Missouri wins the debate. I don't even know how that happens. Right back with more after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Magnificat. Published monthly, Magnificat features texts of daily Mass, prayers, articles, meditations, art commentaries, and more, in step with the liturgical rhythm of the Church, on the web at magnificat.com.
Another great podcast on EWTN Podcast Central is Catholic Feedback with Keith Nestor. In this podcast, former Protestant pastor and Catholic convert Keith Nestor responds to questions and comments from listeners and shares his unique perspective. You can hear this and other faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates around the world at EWTN Podcast Central. Visit EWTN.com/radio and click on Podcast Central today.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. At root, I think whichever one of you said salt in the eye. Was that you?
No, it was
Joe?
me.
That's a very good point. But we have to communicate the person of Christ. That happens person to person.
Yeah.
We have to be talking about Jesus Christ and what he's done, how he's healed us, how he's saved us, and all these other. There's a lot of signaling. And I'm not sure how that signaling has any effect at all.
Yeah, so I haven't seen what the curriculum calls for, or if people are left to their devices. Maybe that'd be better. I'm probably a little more sanguine than Joe and maybe you on this. You said, Cy, the Bible's not a magic book. That's true, but there's grace. There are supernatural graces associated with the Word of God, and if it's present in the public school classroom in Texas, which, as you say, is not California, I have a little bit of hope there.
Well, we should maybe, as Catholics, say we support this as long as Second Maccabees is in there.
You joke, but this was one of the major court fights on teaching religion in school. Is American public schools, were teaching the King James Version. They were insisting on doing the longer form of the Lord's Prayer, which has "For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory," which we don't have. It's not in the original that Jesus gave us, so we don't use it. It's ironically from the Didache, which is a great document, but is not Holy Writ. So, there were these weird Catholic Protestant fights on established religion in the public schools. And that's one of the things that ended up leading to, number one, the creation of Catholic schools, because we didn't want our kids being indoctrinated in Protestantism. And number two, eventually the secularization of the schools.
The Catholic population of Texas is exploding, and it is not immigration from Mexico, though certainly there's an element there. It's Catholics moving from the American Midwest and from the Northeast. The diocese of Dallas and Fort Worth are, 20 times the size they were when they were created, or more.
Yeah,
and they're huge.
Yeah, right.
Fort Worth is the fastest growing metropolitan area in the United States right now.
Well, and also Trent and Laura Horner down there trying to improve the Catholic population.
There's a lot of,
that's why the boom started with their move there.
Well, think about University of Dallas. You had J.J. Sanford in here for another great interview.
Oh, gosh, he was great.
Brilliant. The new.
I don't think we put that interview out yet, though. Did we? Did the Sanford interview go out yet? No, it's going to be good.
It's coming.
It's coming out.
Yeah. So
what a good man. I really enjoyed talking with him. Yeah. I will say this. I do kind of like the Missouri answer that you gave, Joe, and I don't want to move past that too quickly. That if you just let parents choose where they send their children to school, I do think, I don't know, I want to be controversial, but I feel like parents are the primary educators of their children, and they're probably best equipped to do that.
I like the Missouri.
Can I give you the worst political take I've heard?
Yes. Was it from,
okay?
Was it from me? Because then
no, it was not. It
was
on
okay.
Facebook. It was someone had shared this, thinking it was a great like gotcha for whatever you want to say, moral conservatives or whatever. And they said, oh, the same people who don't want to forgive your student loans want vouchers so their kids can go to fancy private school. And it's like, wait a second. Do you not realize that your argument cuts the other way?
Yeah.
You want to be have the government pay the debt on you going to a private, maybe even religious college, which was not necessary. Meanwhile, you don't want underprivileged kids to have the ability to go to a private,
of course,
maybe religious elementary school, when elementary school attendance is legally compulsory.
Right.
And so you can get this great private education because your family could afford it, and then a great college education because you're going to pass the buck on to Uncle Sam and your fellow taxpayer. But kids who actually might need financial assistance to go to private school can't get it, even though, by the way, private school attendance is in almost every case cheaper than paying to send them to underperforming public schools. I cannot fathom a good argument against vouchers.
I'm sensitive to the
because
fact
you
that
can't say
I can.
it's religious without also arguing against student.
All right, I'll let you go. Then I'll
Okay,
go.
so
go ahead.
as you described this, Joe, you made it sound like a tax credit, which I am in favor of.
Yes.
Vouchers make me uneasy, however, because if it is a payment from the state to the school, then the school is subjected to the will of the state in designing its curriculum. Right. So this, for example, is why, to use the common example in higher education in the United States, Hillsdale College refuses to take any, including Navy ROTC funding, because they don't want the government to have anything to say about how they manage their school.
And this has certainly impacted Catholic hospitals,
of course,
and
of course,
other Catholic institutions.
So a voucher, as such, I am unenthusiastic about. But if in fact it is a tax credit, as you describe, my property taxes are reduced, and I can spend that money on on tuition for my kids at a private school, or, as you say, a fund is created by philanthropists and they get a break. That sounds like an excellent idea. But here's the other argument against it. And it's not mine, by the way. It's the left's. It's a follow the money thing. Their job's at stake, right? My job as a public school administrator, but it's also a follow the voters question. So we want to indoctrinate children beginning in kindergarten in this version of liberty, equality, fraternity that we were talking about in the last hour. And if they're not in the public schools, then it becomes more difficult to do that. So,
but the country did pretty good pretty well, excuse me, for that first 100 years when there were no public schools. I mean, basically.
Yeah, I'm not an enthusiast for Horace Mann.
Horace Mann.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I do feel like we need to explain to our international listeners how the American Constitution works. In the United States, the government can pay for religious preschool or religious college, but it can't pay for religious elementary school or high school because something to do with the Constitution. There, I believe I have cleared that up.
It's much clearer.
When you say it that way, I think it highlights the absurdity of the situation.
It is absurd. Of course it's absurd. But there it is. We got the Blaine amendments. We could get into the Blaine amendments, which are the root of this problem. But little by little, I think people are realizing that the Blaine amendments are nothing but anti-Catholic lawmaking, and they're probably unconstitutional themselves. And so one way or another, I do think the Blaine amendments, of course, supported by Senator Blaine, or in memory of Senator Blaine, passed in a bunch of states to state constitutions saying that there could be no state money that went to private or religious schools. It was just pure American anti-Catholicism.
I think that there's a reaction here, like we were talking in the last hour about the reaction to tech. And frankly, I think COVID ushered this along. A growing number of parents with children are seeing the shortcomings of the public school system, and they're looking for other places. And the momentum's going to continue. I'm sanguine.
And the thing is, though, a renaissance of parental choice might actually revivify the public schools. Often people are wrong about the consequences of these things. Like, we don't see where it's going. And so I don't think public school advocates should be quite as nervous as they are.
They're having trouble getting teachers.
Into public schools?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. Well, the state I'm most familiar with in this case would be Illinois, but getting more and more difficult. Salaries, of course, are difficult, but teachers are weary of, policing the classroom.
Yeah. Well, it's tough. It's hard to be a teacher. I mean, when the family can't do its job, it's very hard for the teacher to do his or her job.
Well, talk to a teacher at a parochial school in San Diego, and they'll say, look, yes, I get paid less for sure than if I were teaching in the San Diego public schools, but the stuff I have to deal with in the classroom is
right.
I get to teach.
They get to teach. Yeah, right. All right, we got more to come, including Martin Scorsese with a new TV show. We'll talk about that right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Many people have forgotten just how revolutionary the Bible creation stories are. But the first 3 chapters of Genesis are a powerful challenge to anyone in any generation who would undervalue human lives. In the Beginning, the new book by Monica Migliorino Miller, will take you on a fantastic journey through the first chapters of Genesis, unfolding the richness of life as God sees it. Get In the Beginning today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore.
When it comes to Catholic teachings about Mary, there's one question we hear more than any other. Where is that in the Bible? The answer? Everywhere. In Bible Mary, the Mother of Jesus and the Word of God, Father John Weiss opens Scripture to reveal a Mary who has been hiding in plain sight. Order your copy of Bible Mary today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
What was the church like in its infancy? In a word, Catholic. And Joe Heschmeyer has the receipts. In his best-selling book, The Early Church Was the Catholic Church, he gives you the details from the historical records of the first 2 centuries of Christianity. Right now, get a copy for just $10, plus free shipping if you live in the continental United States. Get more information and order The Early Church Was the Catholic Church at theearlychurchwascatholic.com.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Joe Heschmeyer, Chris Check, our guests today for the flannel panel. We're all wearing flannel. I am Cy Kellett, your host. And what we do with the flannel panel is we get together and we talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. The last one we didn't air because I forgot to push the record button. That's the quality of professionalism you are getting here. And I think this next topic is a hot button. I think it might be a hot button, especially for Chris Check. So I refer now to a story in the National Catholic Register. And
that's EWTN's paper, right? Reporter. Register.
Register belongs to EWTN.
Yeah, EWTN.
Yeah.
It's the good one, is what you're trying to say.
It's not the National Catholic Reporter. The National Catholic Reporter does some good things. I would like to defend them. I remember a very good story in 1987 that I...
Exactly. You're going to be like, something needs to be the base for the cod and chips that I'm making.
Joe, aren't you the one who told me 3 bishops have told them to quit using the name Catholic or something?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen the written letter from the Bishop of Kansas City, who is the ordinary from where they're publishing, telling them stop using Catholic. You don't have permission to do this.
My favorite.
They just like, no, we're good. We don't care what the Catholic Church says.
Recently, from the Reporter was, I think it was Rebecca Bratton Weiss or something, and who was complaining that when Catholic Answers decided to do its AI chatbot priest, we didn't make it a woman priest.
That was the main problem with that, like Rebecca. You caught us. I don't think it's the Catholic. I think it's the reporter part that they're not so good at.
Well, the sanctimonious
that's the
Michael
thing, is
Sean
so much
Winters
commentary.
or whatever his name is there, he's so sanctimonious.
But the National Catholic Register.
Good.
Let's see if
Yeah,
this.
I like the way to bring this back on board.
Look at that's. I'm nothing if not a herder of cats. Let's see if this story registers with you, Chris Check.
You did there.
No meat on Fridays? Some bishops say it's a good idea. There's a proposal to bring back the rule that the U.S. bishops lifted in 1966. A suggestion by an Eastern Rite bishop that Catholics in the United States once again give up eating meat on Fridays throughout the year has drawn interest from more than a dozen bishops in this country, according to reporting from Matthew McDonald in the National Catholic Register. Chris, take it away.
This is funny, like belief in God. Some bishops think it's a good idea.
Well, what are you talking about? Meat on Fridays is not equivalent
No,
of belief in God.
I am using a rhetorical technique called hyperbole.
All right.
Or
Hyperbole.
Excuse me.
Pronounce it correctly.
Okay, or what is it? Sarcasm. Yes. Yes. But I mean, it is a little funny to read. This was a universally accepted and approved, and the merit of which everyone understood, discipline or practice. I am in favor of it for several reasons, but the one that I love the most is the one that Father Feeney, who had, a couple of doctrinal...
He might have gotten excommunicated.
He had some doctrinal things he had to work through, Joe. But he wrote a beautiful essay.
Father Feeney, Father Feeney, as I recall, was corrected by Pope Pius XII.
He was.
Okay, yeah.
He was.
All right.
But he has a beautiful essay that I recommend to everyone called Fish on Fridays.
Oh, I remember that essay. You gave me that to read one time.
And
he did a good job on that.
He says, apart from the mortification of the sacrifice, the great thing about Fish on Fridays is it unites all Catholics.
Yeah.
It's an act of solidarity. And so here's the other thing, I guess related to that, especially around Lent, where, everyone is sort of picking their own, their own sacrifice that they're going to make.
Right. What are you going to do for Lent? That's so much pressure.
I think related to this, we should just go back to the fast schedule of the preconciliar period, where, I don't know, what do we have, like 2 fast days now? There were something like 50 or 53. I counted them once. Let's just go back to that, and we're all united in our sacrifice. So it builds solidarity. Bring it back, definitely. By the way, it never went away. Can we get this clarified, Joe? You're the apologist here.
Well, okay, it's complicated.
It shouldn't be.
I mean, it obviously did go away in one sense. Canon law still calls for meatless Fridays, but the bishops' conference in each country is able to substitute that with a different penance. And the American bishops chose to substitute it with the vague choose your own penance,
Which
and
is
announced
dumb.
that it was no longer binding upon pain of sin.
Yeah.
So it's, I would argue, even of dubious canonical authority, that replacement penance could just mean that you basically just say, don't worry about it. But nevertheless, this stands in canon law, so you're not required to really do much of anything. You're supposed to do a replacement penance on Fridays throughout the year, not just in Lent. You're required to do meatless Fridays in Lent. The rest of the year, except on solemnities, if there's a high holy day, then you're supposed to do either meatless Friday or some kind of penance to remind yourself of the fact of Christ's suffering on the cross.
I'm going to guess the average Sunday Mass goer does not know this distinction.
No, I think that's the thing is I think most people in good conscience, not in bad conscience at all, they
Correct.
have no idea what people know, and I use the word know not in the strict Aristotelian sense, but what they know is in 1966 this was abrogated. You don't have to do it anymore.
Or thereabouts, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and this is one of those, I actually talked to someone who said, oh, you're making that up. If that was true, the priest would have said something about it. So I think there's been a sort of pastoral failure.
Yes.
And I think it's very difficult for, if an individual priest just gets up and preaches about that, they're kind of labeling themselves in a certain way. And I understand, the decision to not maybe have that be the hill you die on. But I do think it's really important. And I actually think if the bishops follow their British brethren's lead on this and just bring it back as the norm throughout the year, it's really good. Ironically, this dovetails very nicely with the Australian story from the first hour, which is in both cases, for those who are just tuning in, it was, in Australia, they've passed a law, or at least in the lower of the two houses, which might be higher in the Southern Hemisphere. I don't know how it works. They passed at least a proposed law to ban social media for those under 16. And in both cases, you're dealing with the fact that these are good ideas that have a collective action problem. Like if you're the only person doing meatlessness, it's hard to do that. Yeah. If everyone else who's Catholic does it, it's a lot easier. I'll give two quick anecdotes.
It influences the culture.
Wait, before you give anecdotes, I need to say this. This is
literally why the Filet-O-Fish exists.
Yeah. This is why Chris wants Meatless Fridays back, is because he feels lonely doing it himself, and he wants the rest of us in on it. That's
if every
fundamentally.
Other Catholic is doing meatless, you get better fish specials.
Okay. Well, let me just give you a little bit of some statistics here, because they did some good reporting here in the National Catholic Register. And the Register contacted representatives for more than 170 Latin Rite bishops who lead dioceses in the United States and several Eastern Rite bishops in the country. Most did not respond. 41 declined comment. But of those bishops who offered a reaction, 13 either said they support it or are open to the idea of it. So they didn't get a huge, but they did their work, but they didn't get a huge.
I bet I could name them.
Do you think you can name 13?
I'm pretty sure.
Do you think Timothy Dolan would be one of them? Because he said this.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes, he did.
No, this is what he said. He gave them a quote. A voluntary return to an act of penance, for instance, Meatless Fridays, would be an opportunity for Catholics not only to demonstrate their shared commitment to care for God's creation, but also reorient themselves to a spirit of self-sacrifice and gratitude for Jesus making the ultimate sacrifice for us on the cross. That first Good Friday, Cardinal Dolan said through a spokesman.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for Cardinal Dolan. I know some people criticize him, I think, harshly. I think on this point, making it all voluntary is part of the problem. I think an actual bit of Episcopal leadership of saying this is what we're doing.
Right.
This is part of the way the bishops exercise fatherhood, frankly. It's not just everybody do your own thing. It's like, no, in this house, this is what we're going to do. And I think it's really good because it gets everybody on board. If everyone's, I've had times where I've been to Catholic events on Fridays throughout the year.
And they're serving meat.
And the main course is meat.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like, this is such a basic starting place that it can't just be, you can be the person who tells, oh, actually, I've got special dietary needs. If this is something that's being done collectively, it's much more doable. Now, I actually think I'll agree with Dylan in this sense. There can be something very meritorious about the fact that you're choosing to do it as opposed to just going along with it. In seminary, for instance, it's very easy to keep Meatless Fridays if you're not setting your own menu. You're just eating what they serve, and they're not serving meat. And so there's a sense you can maybe not even notice that it's a Friday, unless the food is, bad. You might not even be aware. So I understand the kind of argument on the other side that it's better if it's like a voluntary act. But there really is something to be said for the fact that this unites us.
Yes.
One of the great bits of brilliance in the Mosaic Law is you have all of these weird and seemingly arbitrary rules that make the Jewish people distinctive.
Right.
And it creates
a
deep-seated cultural identity and creates deep bonds so that even someone who maybe isn't practicing has something that they connect to the religion with. Catholicism had that. And we kind of scuttled it.
Yeah, we did.
And we see in the numbers what happened.
And it has value.
The next thing you know, we will be influencing what kind of films are made.
What do you mean? Because of the
just because this. Yeah. Well, of course I'm referring to that moment when there was a Friday abstinence, and we also influenced the kind of films that were made with the Legion of Decency,
the Hays Code.
The Hays Code, right? Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I think that if you have a cultural unity that begins with. We're going back to that when Catholics go to fish fries or whatever it is, they abstain from meat. That's the beginning of a solidarity that will find expression in a greater cultural influence.
You know, when you talk
It'll be fun to be Catholic.
When you talk to people who come in as converts to the Catholic Church these days, a very common kind of complaint is they thought there were going to be more Catholic distinctives.
Yeah.
They thought there was going to be more opportunities to be a little odd. And I think I don't think Meatless Fridays is again any kind of panacea. I've used the word panacea for 2 different stories we've covered here, so that's my vocabulary word for the day. Look it up, kids.
Did you find that in the Bible? Was it in the Bible?
But there is something about these Catholic distinctives that do all those things that you both mentioned, that reinforce our identity, that make us recollect what Christ did for us, and that also make us a little odd in the eyes of the world, which is good for us to stand out a little bit. That's not bad for us. That's good for us to stand out. I mean, you know, groups, successful social groups stand out a little bit. They have a little bit of an odd whatever, you know, you can tell that they're part of that group. They have markers. And why did we give up the Catholic markers? I don't know. It was not a good idea, I don't think.
No.
Yeah, you know, this is one of those things. I was watching recently a Protestant YouTuber lamenting the liturgical state of evangelical Protestantism. This idea of a rock concert and a TED Talk. And he basically said, we're offering a worse version of what people can get in the world already. And we're copying the noise and chaos of the outside world, and people are wanting something other than that. Like they're wanting a break from 6 days of that. And if they come into church and they're getting more of that, they're not spiritually satisfied. And so what they're wanting is something radically different. And he was saying, like, this explains why Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy are drawing a lot of young people, because it is radically different. And I think if we lose sight of that, like there's a real opportunity to say, okay, so the world's going crazy. We will boldly, and not in a salt in the eye sort of way, but just boldly, because these things are true, good, and beautiful, stand for something different, and people will be attracted to it on the merits of that. And we don't need to compromise that. We don't need to budge that.
Let me give you the counter argument, which people are like, oh, come on. Look, Jesus taught us to feed the hungry and to clothe the naked and to visit the prisoner. Why are you obsessing about these things that really are, they don't get to the core of it? So one of you answer.
It's a non sequitur. It's not.
He fed them fish, technically. Right. So that's allowed.
He multiplied the fish. That's,
Well, my argument would be, frankly, the church didn't get better at caring for the poor because it started eating meat on Friday.
These things aren't exclusive. Why are they?
Well, not only did it not get better, with the collapse of men and women's religious orders, it got markedly worse.
Yes,
right.
Like if we had healthy religious orders right now, and they were widespread at the rates they were, say, in the mid 20th century, you know how many more people would be feeding, clothing, serving? And I mean, obviously, it's a complicated story there. But it's hard to imagine that we got better at any of those things by losing a constitutive part of our identity.
Right.
It'd be like saying, hey, I don't think the military needs distinctive uniforms anymore. They just need to work on fighting. Like, you've missed something about human anthropology making that argument.
Well said, Joe.
That analogy of the uniforms was... Did that just pop into your head right now?
It did.
Did it really? Well, we need to give Joe a minute to recover, because that must have hurt when that popped in. Well, we'll be right back. Martin Scorsese is going to get his minute of our time. We'll do it when we come back on Catholic Answers Live. I know.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Mother Angelica had a simple goal when she began EWTN: to reach the world with the gospel message. Today, EWTN is the largest Catholic media organization in the world, broadcasting in multiple languages 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've never wavered from our mandate to proclaim the truth and majesty of the Catholic faith. Thank you for joining EWTN in this mission.
Who was the first Catholic in your family? Were they evangelized by a friend, a coworker, a stranger? Did you ever think that you could be that person that God uses to save a soul, and that soul could save their family, their grandchildren, and generations to come? At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we train, equip, and mobilize Catholic disciples to do the urgent work of evangelization. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. If you're wondering what's going on, well, maybe you've never heard our program before because you're traveling and you found us in the car. If that's the case, thank you for spending some time with us. We're very pleased to get to spend some time with you. You can find out all about us at Catholic.com. Whatever station you're listening to us on right now probably broadcasts us at the same time every weekday. And also, another thing you can find at Catholic.com is an answer to virtually any question you've got about the Catholic faith and a really good search engine to help you find that answer.
The best in the world.
Check us out at Catholic.com. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. I'm talking with Joe Heschmeyer, apologist here at Catholic Answers and a wonderful writer, and Chris Check, the president of Catholic Answers. And what we do on occasions, every now and then, the three of us get together and we take 2 hours to talk about the news of the day from a Catholic perspective. And what could be more important than television? There's nothing on earth more important than television. And so I bring you to the story that, I'll tell you what, since we're going to be talking about media that none of us have seen, Martin Scorsese has a new TV show, or there's a movie called Conclave out. Which would you like to hit first? Either of you have any interest in either?
I know about the Conclave.
Tell us about the Conclave thing.
Well,
apparently
it's impossible.
It is an adaptation of a book, and it just proposes what if the cardinals got together and decided to elect someone who cannot become the Pope because of one of the two basic requirements to be the Pope.
Yeah, you have to be a man.
Oh, so
you have to be baptized.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a non-baptized?
Well, no, it is a baptized woman.
Oh,
so spoiler alert, if you were planning on seeing Conclave.
First of all, what's wrong with you if you were planning on seeing Conclave? But go ahead. So the whole thing revolves around that they elect a
biological woman who is confused about her identity.
It's too bad too.
So it's a transgender kind of thing. It's a gender.
Is.
I didn't even know it was a gender
that's
movie.
The big reveal at the end. I think
this is exciting. How titillating!
It's being
we must all go see this now.
Yeah, but it's too bad because it's got Stanley Tucci in it. He's a talented guy. But this is.
I love his Italy TV show.
Yes, his cooking show.
Yeah, his cooking show in Italy.
Well, actually, he made a brilliant film called. Is it First Night? It's called First Night.
I don't know.
It's where the two brothers are opening the Italian restaurant.
Oh, I've never seen it.
It is a brilliant movie.
Wait, we have an Italian right there. Do you know this? Is it called First Night?
It's called
John Barcelo?
First Night. First Night with Stanley Tucci.
Look,
he made
you're
it like 20
Italian. You
years
should
ago.
know all the movies that involve Italian restaurants. Get it together, John.
I think it's First Night. Here's the thing. A plot device in this picture is that there is a large right-wing contingent in the College of Cardinals, and then the lefties
that don't want to vote for a lady.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, but the progressives, represented by Stanley Tucci, they are we've got to do the machinations or whatever to overcome this substantial right-wing portion of the. Anybody watching this movie right now is, which College of Cardinals is it that they're talking about? So it's a silly premise, but his movie First Night is great.
All right, so Conclave sounds like a sad undertaking, but I think Voldemort's in it too, though. Was Voldemort? Does anybody know? I think the guy who played Voldemort is in
Big Night, by the way, is the name of the movie.
Oh, Big Night.
All right.
Is it Big Night?
Yes,
there is a movie called Big Night, but I don't know if that's the same one.
Poor Martin Scorsese has been waiting for 2 hours for us to talk about him. He gets no attention until we talk about him.
Big Night.
So Scorsese has this is, first of all, this didn't seem like a real thing when I first saw it. Fox Nation is sort of a TV station, sort of a website. It's one of the two. I actually subscribed to it for a month once, because Tom Nash was staying at my house, and there was some comedian that was going to appear on it. He wanted to see that comedian, and it was only $2 to subscribe for a month. So I said, "All right, Tom." I like
that your description just makes Tom Nash sound like a bad roommate or something.
No, he's a great guy.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. I apologize. I love Tom Nash. I'm sorry I said it that way.
Tom's great.
Okay, so I had I known Scorsese was coming, I probably would have kept my subscription going. But so
how much do they pay you? This is $2.
They don't pay me that much. But Fox.
Okay, fair enough.
Fox Nation sounds like that sounds kind of Fox Newsy, right? Martin Scorsese doesn't sound like a Fox Newsy kind of guy. And
Well,
then
not only that,
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese really famously was against streaming.
Oh, he was?
He wanted movies to be like in theaters, and was really like, if you release it on Netflix, it shouldn't be available for award shows. And he was leading the charge against that, and then had like
I'm sympathetic.
And then they started giving him money
I'm sympathetic.
to make the stuff he wanted to
By
make.
the way.
But okay, so but then
TV has ruined movies.
Scorsese's making a TV show, so this adds to my my perplexity. And then it's a TV show about Catholic saints. The confluence of rivers here strikes me as odd.
The last part is totally believable.
Well, I know he's very interested in Catholic. He's a Catholic.
Well, he's baptized. He's probably confirmed too. I don't think he's a practicing Catholic, but I think he thinks a lot about the fact that he's a Catholic.
He went to a preparatory seminary.
I think so. Yeah. And he's all. I mean, how would you be an artist raised as a Catholic and not have? I mean, you'd have to be an idiot not to use the
Well,
Catholic.
he made
thing.
the picture about the Japanese martyrs.
Right, and he made the Last Temptation of Christ.
Or not martyrs.
Last Temptation of Christ was
He
kind
has
of a clunker, Marty.
He
I
has
don't know about
made
that.
some good pictures.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
he may be a genius.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, but you see the Fox Nation thing and the TV show thing, it all threw me. So now I want to see it, especially because the first episode is about my hero,
Joan of
and
Arc.
your hero,
Joan of Arc.
Joan
She's
of
one
Arc.
of mine.
Joe, you
I've
need to
talked
make
to her a
Joan
lot.
of Arc your hero. Then you could join our
Joan of
club.
Arc is-
Joan of
yeah.
Arc Hero Club. There's 2 members. You need to be the
Yeah.
3rd member.
Yeah.
All right. We're up to 3 members for our club.
I made a Joan d'Arc de Triomphe joke once on this show that you didn't care for, but
I'm
yes,
shocked.
Joan
It
of
was a
Arc
pun
is-
that I didn't care for. I'm shocked.
I know.
Joe.
Who would have guessed, especially a multilingual.
I'm gonna get. I'm gonna get
say-
news. What's it called? Fox Nation. News Nation. Fox Nation. I'm gonna get it and watch this.
I think you're going to be disappointed. Joan of Arc is sort of the low hanging fruit for people like Scorsese or
What does that mean? People like Scorsese.
other filmmakers who want to touch Catholic points or engage the Catholic culture
Without believing in the hypostatic
Because
union?
it's a strange story, and I can cast.
There's a little cross-dressing in it.
Can I cast it as a feminist? Can I
Right.
tell the feminist version of events, or the crazy person version of events, or whatever it is?
Turns out, unlike becoming Pope, women can lead armies.
Oh yeah. And
so it contrasts nicely with Conclave.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, but I want to see it. Unless that. Okay, well, first of all, as research, could I get Catholic Answers to pay for my subscription?
Sure.
Oh, what?
$2.
I just got myself $2 there.
This is
Take
totally
that.
the equivalent of asking if a friend can stay the night in front of the friend. Can they spend the night at our house?
But there is this thing about, great art really should engage with the Catholic Church. I mean, it's silly to think that you're going to make great art that doesn't engage with the Catholic Church. The most important artistic benefactor and inspiration in the history of the world is the Catholic Church. So I'm glad Scorsese's doing it. I don't know much about him personally. I don't know what but it does seem to be something that's not weird, but like that actually has a Catholic. It seems to have some like real love for the saints. Like he really
I don't
wants
think
to.
he's one of these people who's like out to get the Catholic Church.
No,
I think he
no,
probably
I didn't
has
have
a
that.
complicated relationship. There might be some issues on which we'd part company with him on certain things, but I think this is someone who grapples with the idea of Catholicism very honestly
and recognizes the
comes out in a
saints
largely
as
good place.
the sign of something.
Based on his body of work, some of which I think is very talented filmmaking, I am not sanguine about this particular.
I'll
project.
Well, I think he's come around some religiously in the
perhaps.
last few years.
Yeah.
All right.
Although this is a project he's been planning since the 80s, apparently.
Tom Nash, one of the greatest people there is, so I apologize for any. Also,
his
once again, I
cape
want to
is
apologize
way
to
over
all
the
the
top.
people of Australia for any implication that some Australians might be demons. I want to apologize to the state of Texas that you lost in your own story to the state of Missouri. That's unfortunate. So many apologies should be made, but I will find out about this.
You are a
Scorsese
regular
thing.
apologist.
I should be an apologist. I'm good at apologizing. Joe Heschmeyer, it's always great to get to talk with you. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
And likewise.
And Chris Check, it's always pretty good to talk with you.
I'm thankful for my brothers on the flannel panel.
Oh, me too. Thank you,
Amen.
Chris.
Happy
That's beautiful.
Thanksgiving,
I'm going to go
everybody.
spend that Catholic Answers $2 on Fox Nation
We're
and
gonna
watch me
raise
some
that
Martin
money.
Scorsese. See you next time, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.